The French Prime Minister François Bayrou is currently outlining a plan to trim 40 billion euros from the 2026 budget. This 2 days after the French President Emmanuel Macron announced an increase in defense spending over the next 2 years. Bayrou faces the tricky task of trying to keep the left and the far right on board if he wants to keep his job. Take a listen to what he's been saying.
La dette de notre pays représente aujourd'hui plus de 3 300 milliards d'euros.
Our country's debt now stands at over 3,300 billion euros. That's 114% of our annual national product, which means that this debt represents more than a year's worth of everything our country has produced in all its agricultural, industrial, intellectual, commercial, health and care activities. The debt exceeds it by at least 2 whole months, and the more the debt increases, the more it's a double-edged sword.
La dette le dépasse de au moins 2 mois entiers. Et plus la dette s'accroît, plus c'est la double peine.
France 24's French politics editor Mark Perlman has been listening to what the Prime Minister has been saying. He's been outlining a whole bunch of things, including scrapping 2 days of public holidays from next year to finance these cuts. How is this all likely to go down, Mark?
Well, not very well. Obviously, this is a Churchillian speech. The moment of truth, this is how it's been billed. And the Prime Minister has said this is unsustainable. France is addicted to public expenditure. It's the country where the public expenditure is at the highest. The tax level is one of the highest in the world. And nevertheless, people are unhappy with public services. And this is unsustainable, so this has to stop now. This is why he outlined a 4-year plan to, quote-unquote, stop the debt. And he says we have to bring the deficit from 5.6% of GDP this year down to 2.8% in 2029. He said this 2.8% figure is not by happenstance, it's the level where we are not spending more on the debt and we can do something else. And so you've talked about this 40 billion euros figure that the government wanted to slash. Well, the Prime Minister announced that given the added defense expenditure, this figure is now, for next year, 43.8 billion euros, nearly 44 billion. So it's even more than people had anticipated. And so he announced a whole range of measures, essentially saying this year will be a blank year. That is, all the state expenditure will be the same as last year. This will not take into account inflation, even though inflation is around 1%. This will allow the government to pay less in terms of public spending for, state employees, for example, but also for pensions. He said there would be no across-the-board tax increase. However, some of the wealthiest will be asked to contribute. It's not exactly been defined by how much, but they will be asked to contribute more than the rest. And there are a number of technical measures that are being taken to bring down expenditure, also in terms of the health system. That is obviously one of the biggest spenders of public money. He said there will be measures to bring down the level of reimbursement of medicine, the way people are taking days off and so on. And as you said, an added measure, which he says is a way for to show that the French need not only to spend less, but to work more. 2 days 2 national holidays will be scrapped. He said, I'm ready to discuss, but he suggested Easter Monday and May 8th. This is the end of World War II, which is a national holiday. He said, there's no reason for us to celebrate those holidays. People could work those 2 days, and this will add more money into the public pot. But obviously, again, as you just said, those are measures that are being presented now that are going to be formalized in a budget presented to Parliament. A Parliament where, as he said himself, he has no majority and he faces the possibility of being brought down, like his predecessor Michel Barnier, on a budget.
But so, from what he's announced, do you think this is going to be palatable to, as you said, we have a fractured parliament, to the base he needs supporting him?
Well, the problem is that his base is not enough. Even the Macron camp is rather divided, but let's say they will say, okay, we need that effort. This has been endorsed by the president. Obviously, the prime minister discussed this with the president as even today. This morning, they had a meeting to figure out the latest details and so on. But that's essentially 1/3 of the parliament. The left is not going to be in favor of slashing public expenditure, and they've already said so. This is not going to be accepted by the left. Maybe François Bayrou is hoping that towards the center, maybe some socialists will say, yes, those are dire financial straits we are in, so we need a special effort as long as it's fair and it's not targeting the popular classes and so on. That might be acceptable. The big question and the big question mark is what the National Rally will do, because they hold the key to François Bayrou's survival. They decided to bring Michel Barnier down on a budget vote a few months ago. They might decide those are things where they can always find. There are so many measures being announced that they might say we're not in agreement to cut health expenditure. We're not in agreement to have maybe the pensions not getting favorable treatment by being in correlation with inflation. There are a number of issues they could use to bring the government down. Maybe it's not in their interest right now, but obviously François Bayrou decided to present this on July 15th because he knows there'll be a summer break. People will maybe discuss this. He'll maybe have time to forge some compromises on some issues. He might push some issues, withdraw others. He knows this is only the beginning of a negotiation with the fractious parliamentary groups, and he'll have to see whether he can survive this budget vote. But clearly, this will be the moment of truth for him in October, when the parliament will decide whether this is acceptable or not.
We'll see what political reactions we'll get in the hours to come. Thank you very much for that, Mark Perman there.